We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
There's a deepening trend taking place across America. It's political, it's cultural, it's economic, and it seems as though it's eventually going to affect everything. Whether this change significantly impacts the upcoming midterm elections, however, is still an uncertain quantity. Now, noted physicist Albert Einstein, he once said, quote, "As far as the laws of mathematics refer to reality, they're not certain. And as far as they are certain, they do not refer to reality," end quote. It's a keen summation that has particular relevance for us today. If Einstein's words on the nature of reality and mathematics strike a chord, it's likely because we live in a politicized society where keen observers live and die by the latest polling. We have this overarching belief that political surveys are indicators, and sometimes they are, but sometimes they're also tools of persuasion. We have polls and pundits prognosticating the future, but as with almost everything, the systems of this magnitude are far too complex to parse easily. But there are certain clues, and we'll be diving into what those hints and clues are on today's edition. Welcome to Liberty Nation Radio here on the Radio America Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. On today's episode, we have with us Editor-in-Chief Lisa K. Donner to discuss the blue exodus on the horizon and some surprising news out of New York State. We'll also be talking Biden's obfuscation on inflation and when it will break. And in our special Talking Liberty segment, we discuss the regulation that's killing a growing Californian industry. I'd like to say a special thank you to our listeners out in Evergreen, Alabama on WNWF 1470 AM and on WPNS on 1140 AM. Thanks for being here. Remember, this show is proudly sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news, analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. Let's get started. With former representative from Hawaii and one-time presidential contender Tulsi Gabbard taking a walk away from the Democratic Party, it's time to ask whether the same follies she accuses Team Biden of committing might be pushing out other Democrats. Now, Liberty Nation's editor-in-chief, Lisa K. Donner, she's not only been following this particular story, but she's also been following the overall trend, and she joins us here today to discuss the potential exodus from the land of the blue. Welcome back to the show, Lisa, and thanks for being here.
Hi, Mark. How are things on the other side of the pond?
Oh, let's not get too much into the collapsing government or the ever-expanding government, whichever way you want to look at it. Either way, it's like a domino effect. One person falls, the next comes out. Apparently, it's going to be my turn to lead the country soon enough. So, Lisa,
you've got my vote.
Thanks very much. I'll take it. I mean, of course, that would be an illegal vote. Because you're not a resident, but
who cares? It's England, right?
Yeah, that is very true. We tend not to worry too much about the 130% turnout in certain areas. I shan't name them for fear of issues.
Well, you're taking your lead from Philadelphia and Chicago. Oops.
Absolutely. Those are the ones. So, Lisa, for me, there's two aspects to this Tulsi Gabbard and this larger issue of people moving away from the Democratic Party. The first, obviously, is Tulsi Gabbard, and the second is what's taking place in New York. Now, I hope to talk about the New York one later if we have time, but what I want to know about Tulsi is Tulsi's trauma catching?
Well, it's quite auspicious timing she picked. And I actually did something I don't do very often, which is I went to her YouTube and watched the whole 28 minutes. Which I don't think I've done since back when I watched Trump's coming down the escalator. I'm not a big YouTube watcher.
I got to tell you, Lisa, you think that was a chore? And it wasn't a chore. It was more of a pleasure. But I watched the entire Joe Rogan 2 hours 30 interview with Tulsi. So,
wow!
Oh yeah, that's a whole thing. That's a whole other thing. So what was your take on it?
Well, talk about being fed up. You know, I was interested that she came out at this time, just before the November 8 elections. But also, there is a writer on Substack by the name of Sasha Stone, who is a Democrat, and she identifies as a Democrat, but she's right on the Tulsi train. And she talked about that in, I think, a particularly interesting and well-written article. where the true blue Democrats are just, fed up with the excessive need of the party elite to control everyone, control everything. These are pro-choice, pro-environment Democrats, but they're unwilling to surrender themselves and their family to the angry woke mob.
I like the way you use the term surrender there, because it almost seems that many of the people within, we're talking like regular people that you and I know who support Democrats in general. And it feels as though they've almost been kidnapped by the Biden team ideology, doesn't it? It's almost as though they're suffering from not the Helsinki syndrome. What am I thinking? Stockholm syndrome. It's close, but more fish.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if she was the first one to coin this phrase or term or what, but Stone called these people temporary Republicans who are going to need to go to the polls and vote Republican. And then in her article, she kind of ticks down a tweet. I looked on Gabbard's YouTube to look for some comments. And it's interesting because the people that they're talking to, these temporary Republicans or these Tulsi Gabbard Republicans, are really very true blue. I mean, one tweet was from somebody by the name of Madame Kemp, and she wrote, "I'm a pro-choice suburban mom, a longtime blue voter. This November, I'm voting Republican straight down the ticket. The Democrats who lock my kids up can go blank themselves."
I mean, suburban moms. I mean, that's for the Democrats. That's the golden ticket, isn't it? That's the Willy Wonka golden ticket.
And then without having to look too far beyond that, sorry to cut you off, yeah. I came up on two quotes from Tulsi Gabbard's YouTube. And she had one from a Latin woman and one from a Black man. And both of them are really angry. And that made me think, this new voting bloc they're really hardcore Democrats. They're the Hispanics, they're the Blacks, they're the demographics, the women. These demographics were traditionally, they all belong to the Democratic Party. Now, if you're losing your base, you're hanging out there with a big problem.
Yeah, I wonder how that's going to play out, though. So I can see it happening in the midterms because it's a rebuke, isn't it? That's really what they're getting at here. They're saying, you've left me behind, and so I need you to reconfigure your thinking and come back to be the party that they wanted of them. A pro-life party, a pro-environment party, that kind of thing. It's maybe slightly more government expansion, that kind of stuff. But do you think that will carry on to a 2024 ticket?
Well, my dad, go ahead.
No, because it seems to me that if, for example, if Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis were heading the ticket, which of course it'll almost certainly be one of those, would that be a bridge too far for what Ms. Stone terms the temporary Republicans?
I don't think so. And here's why. My dad used to have a phrase called straighten up and fly right. So whenever we did something that wasn't quite right,
I love the song. I love the song.
That was the command. That was the command. And I think this is what a lot of these temporary Republicans are saying to the Democratic Party: straighten up and fly right. Now, traditionally, what happens when there's nobody you prefer in an election, people stay home. But it seems to me like these temporary Republicans or these Gabbard Republicans are ones that aren't willing to stay home. They really want their voice to be heard by, voting on the Republican ticket.
Yeah, I wrote an article on this recently for LibertyNation.com where I discussed the circular firing squad of the Democratic Party campaign strategy. And one of the points that I made in that was that the party isn't listening to voter concerns. So, for example, Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, they're pushing that abortion is the key issue for these coming midterms. Whereas all the polling shows that among Republicans, independents, and even Democrats, it's inflation in the economy. And if the party leadership is going to be ignoring what they're telling the party leaders through the polls, then surely there's a frustration there because they're not being listened to. And really not being listened to is one of the the biggest sins that you can cast upon an elected leader, isn't it?
Well, the Democrats have the polling operations polling the issue of abortion over and over and over, and they keep hoping for a different result. And the fact is that abortion only polls at a certain level, and it's never as high as the economy. I mean, that's just the way it goes, you know? And I think Gabbard and Stone are providing these Democrats with something that, you know, I've mentioned many times, you're probably sick of hearing, but maybe our listeners and viewers haven't heard, and that's called the permission concept. This is the psychological barrier that's crossed when, let's say you're all sitting around at a restaurant and the first person doesn't order dessert, right? Then there's like an 80% chance that all the rest aren't going to order dessert. But if the first person does order dessert, I'll take the apple pie, please. You know, the chances are like much higher that everyone else is going to order dessert, or at least most of the table. It's kind of giving people psychological permission. And that's what Gabbard and Stone are talking about, giving Democrats kind of the leeway to know that they're not hanging out there alone. They have psychological permission to go over across the political aisle and the freedom to really vote their conscience.
Well, it's the Republicans' job now to see if they can hold on to those voters. So we're talking with Liberty Nation's editor-in-chief, Lisa K. Donner, on the Blue Party exodus and the permission concept. After this short break, we'll be back with Lisa, talking some surprising midterm information. Don't go anywhere. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides. Entertaining, informative, and just plain fun. Watch Liberty Nation's The Conservative 5. Produced by conservatives for conservatives. C5's The Left Free Zone. Hosted by Liberty Nation's Lisa K. Donner. Joined by a raucous, irreverent panel of authors. Deconstructing leftist narratives. Debating the hot topics. And remembering to laugh. Join the official conservative safe
You only
space.
did that to piss Jeff off.
Liberty Nation's The Conservative 5.